we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a number of folks here, 4 various secretaries, and so they will introduce themselves during the roll call. Let us call this Strategic Growth Council meeting to order. Can we do the roll call? And do you guys mind doing it? I hate having them do it. Can you guys call names and have us do present?
Ashley Conrad Seda.
I'm present for Jared Blumenfeld.
For Dr. Galley.
Yes, this is Jana Olsen-Morgan. I'm present for Dr. Galley.
For Calsta.
Present for, this is Alyssa Cano for David Kim.
For Office Planning and Research.
Kate Gordon, present.
Michael Flad.
I'm here.
For Natural Resources.
Wade Crowfoot here.
For CDFA.
Karen Ross, thank you. Sorry for being late.
And Nicole Capritz.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Karen, we were just chatting. It wasn't that we were waiting on you, so don't worry about it. I am really excited to have Alyssa here as the new Undersecretary for the Department of Transportation. So I don't know if you want to say just a couple words about yourself.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. It's so wonderful to meet everyone here. I started about 4 weeks ago. I'm standing in for Secretary Kim. He arrives July 1st, not that I'm counting down. So we're very excited. So I'm most recently coming from Metrolink, the commuter railroad in Los Angeles, in Southern California through 5 counties. So I've got some local experience, and prior to that, I worked at the Federal Highway Administration. I come from a budget and policy background, and actually started my career in DC as an analyst in the Office of Management and Budget. So I've got a variety of transportation, environmental, land use, planning, a lot of exciting issues here in front of the SGC. So I'm really happy to be here and participate. Thank you.
Thank you. We are thrilled, particularly, to have someone with transit experience in such a key position. So we're really happy to have you. Welcome. And we're counting down the days till Secretary Kim gets here too. Can we do the approval of minutes from the April 30th meeting? Is there a motion for discussion?
Moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you. So moved. Moving to the council members' update, which you may remember from the last meeting, we are expanding into a time to actually talk about exciting things moving at agencies, of which there are many, because the budget process is closing and all kinds of projects are in moving. So, I'd love to hear from folks about what they've been seeing both inside and outside the state in the strategic growth area. So I don't know who wants to start. You want to just go down the line, Ashley?
Sure. Well, yeah, this has been a great and exciting budget process. I know from the Cali PA perspective, we're really excited about the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Program and the work we can do there to ensure that we're helping communities get access to clean water, and over time ensure that every community, by the end of this administration, it would be great to say that every community has access to clean drinking water. So we've been working really closely. The Air Board and the Water Board have been working amazingly well on trying to figure out how to launch that program, and working with OPR and others in the governor's office and Department of Finance to get that done too.
Yeah, good morning. I think sort of similar to many other people at the table, this is a really exciting time as we wrap up the budget and finalize. So we're really excited about the investments that have been made to help vulnerable communities in a variety of our programs under the Health and Human Services Agency, and excited to sort of see the further connections to affordable housing, which is a key component of helping those communities as well.
Not yet.
No.
Nothing? Wait.
Well, I would just add that we continue to be focused on what I sort of broadly characterize as climate resilience in the agency, both working with OPR and others on beginning to update the administration's approach on climate resilience and adaptation, and then sort of 2 subcategories that I'm spending a lot of my time personally on, and one is water. We are actively working as an interagency team to develop the governor's recommendations for the governor's water resilience portfolio, by Thanksgiving. We've just stood up a website called waterresilience.ca.gov, which provides an opportunity for stakeholders, members of the public, to really help us identify what should be California's water priorities over the next 4 years. And then we are also doing a set of listening sessions in existing bodies like the Food and Ag Board and others, and then some actual specific meetings that we're pulling together on that. So we're really excited about that. And then obviously we're headed into the height of wildfire season. So the other area, subcategory beyond water, we really focused on in an urgent way as it relates to resilience is protecting communities and environmental habitats from mega fires. And a lot happening on that, both the sort of near-term emergency actions and then the broader integrated work to expand forest management and community preparedness.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would just recommend that everybody, all of us are Californians, and 11 million of us live in risk areas of one kind or another, so really do pay attention to those articles about preparedness, and to CAL FIRE's website. It's getting those bags packed is really a really smart thing to do.
So there's so much happening because everybody in the world has awoken to the fact of the power of our soils and the ability to sequester carbon. Earlier this month, CDFA made another round of grant selections for our Healthy Soils program. 217 proposals were selected for almost $12.5 million. Obviously, we're very excited that the proposed budget that's awaiting the governor includes an increase for Healthy Soils for our program going forward. I also just want to briefly comment that last year the Strategic Growth Council did something innovative. And while the contracting issues took much longer than we wanted it to for a contract for us with the University of California Ag and Natural Resources Division, we are in the process of fully staffing up for 10 community educators. That's all about climate-smart agriculture and specifically doing outreach and providing assistance to farmers of low income, disadvantaged communities, severely impacted communities. And I'm proud to say that even though they were only at 35% capacity during our grant program, they have a 50% rating on getting people, not just helping them understand the programs, helping them apply, and getting awards selected. So we're really happy about that, and I think it bodes well for the future of just getting more infrastructure out there to build awareness. There's two other things I wanted to touch on. I was visited a few weeks ago by a startup company that was actually recognized as one of the most innovative in the ag startup arena. And last week, they made a very big announcement. They are all about carbon farming and recognizing that for farmers to be able to just survive and grow a crop, that we need to partner with them for all these other practices that have public benefit. The name of the company is Indio Ag, and they made an announcement last week called the Terraton Initiative, which is to sequester 1 trillion tons of carbon in our soils. And their goal for this year is to sign up 3,000 farmers globally for more than 1 million acres to start really doing the hard work. They're paying $15 a ton, which is pretty significant, and I think it's a game changer. So we'll see what happens. And then finally, I had the pleasure of speaking at a UN conference last week under the rubric of adaptation and resiliency. USDA made that possible. What is happening across the globe to really unleash the power of the soil, and working in all continents and being a part of that lineup, but no one else has a natural working landscape strategy as part of their climate plan. And so I think there's a real opportunity for California to continue to play a leadership role.
Thank you. That's all incredibly inspiring. I definitely want to hear more about the carbon farming idea. We'll talk about that. Nicole, anything to add?
Sure. So I would just like to highlight two things. One is that some folks may have seen, but the California Environmental Justice Alliance put out a report card of the state agencies, and Strategic Growth Council got an A-. So kudos to the staff and the team, because they really commended you for your transparency, your openness, your creativity, and I think that's something to be proud of. And I'm proud to be on the board for the work that you're doing, and they really did highlight, I know we'll have more conversation about this, but the transformative climate communities is one of kind of their pivotal focus areas, and that, you know, we're making great progress. We still have a ways to go, and I know you all know that, and we're on the same page. But I just thought you all should be proud, and I want to acknowledge your A-, and, you know, I don't know what the minus is for, but no, but kudos. And then secondly, I'm sure you all saw that New York is getting a lot of attention for passing their climate plan. And I thought what was noteworthy, obviously, I feel like, you know, we really are the pioneers, though, to be fair. It's kind of hard to watch them like get this attention that we usually get as a state. But I thought what was noteworthy, and most of the media pointed out that, yeah, California already has that 100% renewable goal, but the one element that they're sort of leapfrogging over us with is the fact that they made law their carbon neutrality goal. And so just because I'm on the ground and working with local governments and regional governments, it is stymieing us in a way that the only law, like the only requirement for local governments is to get to the 2030 goal, the SB 32 goal, versus the executive order, which is the carbon neutrality by 2045. So I know there's a lot of, you guys are doing an awesome job at the state level to talk about the 2045 goal, and kudos to you. And I know this is a legislative action that would need to happen, so this is nothing about the governor's office, but just to let folks know on the ground, as these long-term planning documents are being put forward for transportation, land use, climate plans, we get pushback when we try to get them to look out past 2030 because they're like, well, we don't have to, that's not the law, right? So just to put that's kind of what's happening on the ground, and so it's preventing us from really doing what we need to do to kind of plan for the next 30 plus years. Thank you.
Thanks. That is great feedback. I'll just say a couple of things from the OPR standpoint, but also sort of just the general sort of governor's office and climate standpoint. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund budget is moving with the larger budget, which is unusual, but has, I think, a real commitment, and you've heard a number of pieces of it here, but a real commitment to on-the-ground community impact, really a number of increases across diesel pollution, sort of trying to move ag vehicles, off-road vehicles, large buses and trucks off of diesel, to do engine replacement, a lot of funds into AB 617, which is a air pollution disadvantaged communities program, both in technical assistance and in grants, a significant amount in climate smart agriculture, which is such a key sector in the state. Also, of course, both AHSC and TCC, which Louise will talk about, so I won't go too much into those. The overall Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund was up because the last auction of cap and trade funds was fairly significant, up to about $17 a ton in May, and so the numbers were up, and so HSC in particular, you'll see a big bump in those numbers, which is really exciting. And safe drinking water, of course, in there. The two things I just wanted to highlight, because they sort of go to what Nicole said too. One is, in the budget, and this was in the governor's May revision and is in the final budget, and this is something that Wade and Jared and a number of us worked on, and Ashley and a number of us worked on, is a roadmap toward the carbon neutrality goal by 2045. So it's not, you're absolutely right that it's not entrenched in state law, but the fact that it's in the budget and there's a commitment to doing a roadmap to figure out how to get to it is incredibly important. And that roadmap is going to look at both bringing down demand and bringing down supply, which is a new thing. I mean, this is it's a significant articulation of a policy, right? There's an additional report in there that the Assembly added, which is a report to specifically look at bringing down transportation emissions, and that will look at both the vehicle side and, to the extent possible, the land use side. So I think we'll end up, OPR and SGC, in one way or another involved in both of those, as are most of these agencies. So I think there'll be a real opportunity to think about that, what that looks like. So not just what is the goal, but actually what do we think that looks like in a phased approach? So I'm excited about that. The other piece of the budget that I think is really important from sort of, and from an SGC perspective, of being really integrated about the approach that we have to what do we mean by sustainable, inclusive community and growth, is a piece that significantly boosts workforce training and high road regional partnerships for looking at training in communities on the kinds of jobs that are created by these investments. It turns out that about 60% of all of the jobs created by our Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund investments are in construction, which isn't actually that surprising if you think about where we put most of the money. But the construction industry has historically been fairly closed, and so there's a significant investment, about $10 million, into the Construction Career Ladders program that focuses on pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships into construction careers that can be kind of the construction workforce of the green economy, which I think is really exciting. And then there's also a big investment in these high road training partnerships, really looking at not just how do we create jobs across the region of the state, but how do we create jobs that are high road, that are both good jobs and that are sustainable. And calls out in particular the need to focus those strategies in areas that have been traditionally dependent on fossil fuels and looking ahead to a transition strategy. So that's kind of like a groundbreaking approach that the governor personally was very invested in and very, very strongly involved in. And I just think it's sort of, to me, those things, and also the fact that in the larger budget, the housing money, a significant amount is going into the infill infrastructure grant program to focus infrastructure money on infill and on sustainable communities. That's an integrated approach to climate throughout the budget that I think is really exciting, and I think is a testament in large part to this group and people talking to each other and sharing ideas and figuring out where the intersections are. So it's a great start, and we can't wait to have you guys involved. And I think it's a really good kind of articulation of the governor's agenda. So thank you to everybody at the table for involvement on all of those pieces. All right, anything else anyone wants to add? All right, moving to the executive director report.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody. I know that the focus is really here on some of the more substantive areas, so I'll run through a quick set of updates. I'll go through a few program updates. I want to follow up on a couple of items from the April council meeting where there were some specific actions requested and sort of give an update on where we are, and then I'll touch on our budget appropriations for SGC. So first, I wanted to circle back to an action that was actually taken in December by the council. So in December of 2018, we awarded our second round of Transformative Climate Communities Implementation and Planning grants. And at that meeting, we had funds to award 4 planning grants. At that meeting, the council approved those 4 grants and also approved awarding a planning grant to the city of Indio should additional funding become available. Every grant in that round, we did a uniform grant amount of $200,000. SGC staff identified some available funds that would support that grant and are working with the Department of Conservation staff to execute the grant agreement, but I wanted to bring that back and update you all. With that means in round 2 for TCC planning grants, we will have 5 recipients. So these are the 4 we awarded in December with the city of Indio now included. And as you can see, we had a very tight clustering of scores, and so that was really a lot of the direction here was the next ones down were well into the 60s, and so we wanted to create an opportunity for Indio should it become available, and luckily it did. And so we are working to get them the grant to start this work. The next I wanted to, we will be recommending some AHSC awards today, but I also wanted to let the council know that AHSC has been nominated for an award. So the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program has been nominated to receive an Innovation in American Government Award, which is a competition hosted by the Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation at Harvard. The focus of this year's program is economic opportunity and for all. It's a program that's been around since the mid-'80s. It's recognized about 500 innovative programs, and ultimately, if you're selected and win, you receive grant funding and significant press coverage. So we are really honored to have been nominated. We are working on developing our application. So for folks here who have applied to us, we are now applying to them, and we'll be submitting that late next week. And so we'll keep you up to date. This is just the first of several rounds, but as ever, just an honor to be nominated. So wanted to share that with the council. The next update I wanted to just more get on folks' radar screens is that we every year get most years, we've been getting small amounts of reappropriated Proposition 84 funds. And Prop 84 was passed in 2006, and that was for folks who have been around for a while. That was what we used to do our initial rounds of planning grants at SGC. And so this also is what we've been using to do TCC planning grants. This year, based on what we had remaining from last year and appropriation of this year, we're going to have approximately $750,000 in planning money available. This money is different than GGRF. The eligible applicants are local governments and local, things like regional agencies. The challenge with this funding, as many of you probably know, is it comes back to us for projects that cannot be completed, but no longer has any support funding associated with it. So we have to come up with creative ways to use this money. So that's why we've used it for TCC. We also did a collaboration with OPR to do best practices pilots, working with some of our Civic Spark communities. So what we're doing right now, which actually relates to items that were just raised up in the council member updates, is working with OPR and the Integrated Climate Adaptation and Resiliency Program to think about how we can put some of this money back out to wildfire-affected communities and potentially also at-risk communities to help fill some of the planning gaps that are in place that either are hindering recovery or could help them to be getting ready. So we are really working on trying to figure out what that looks like, but I wanted to give you all a heads up, and we'll come back with a more formal proposal in August or October of how to move forward with those funds. Finally, an update on health and all policies, and this is, of course, always a lot going on here. We'll have a quarterly task force meeting that's going to focus on data and metrics for healthy and equitable communities. Also, updates on the racial equity capital cohort. Some exciting activities at the last meeting. We heard from a couple of local governments, Santa Clara County and the city of Long Beach, on some of their experiences of applying racial equity tools to budgeting and community engagement strategies. In June, a couple of our staff went to the Public Utilities Commission meeting, and the Public Utilities Commission voted at their commission meeting to join the capital cohort. And then recently there was also an update, Caltrans's executive committee had a hosted GARE for a briefing. So we're preparing for a July session on workforce that's going to include discussion about recruitment strategies, results-based accountability metrics, and a presentation from CalHR. And I'll provide a few updates on our specific activities, SGCs, on GARE in just a second. And so that actually is what will come right now as I give a few follow-ups. Those are just a few program updates, some follow-ups from April. At April, we approved the Racial Equity Action Plan, and I should start by saying that's received a lot of very positive attention. So just again, want to thank the council for that action to approve that plan. And at the meeting, my Vice Chair Vlad asked us some questions about how to think about, how we're going to prioritize the actions and really how we'll start tracking our progress and understand how things are going for us. So following the council meeting at one of our staff meetings, we started talking about next steps and how do we take that racial equity action plan and turn it into activities. So as a start, we're going to be forming 3 working groups, staff working groups, to focus on grants, contracts, and workforce. And that with those working groups, we're going to finalize strategies, think about our performance measures, and how we're going to monitor progress in each of those categories of activities. And then we'll be also allocating time within our staff meetings to discuss how we can build more organizational culture and competency around issues of race and equity. And so we've done some of that, and we'll continue to do more. Finally, we'll be administering with OPR jointly, looking at the joint SGC and OPR staff racial equity employee survey. And this is being administered by Race Forward, the organization that leads the GARE work. And it's being offered free of charge to all GARE participants, and then with the results presented back to each participating department. So the survey is going to collect information from employees on their knowledge understanding and perceptions about racial equity. So really important baselining and understanding of what's going on within our organization. So far, we also know that the Air Resources Board, Cali PA, HCD, and the State Lands Commission will also participate. And I know many other participants are considering it and just running it through all the necessary channels. I should mention CDPH, this is their third year doing GARE work, has actually already completed their own survey, and so are continuing on down that path.
And we have more information about the survey up here if you guys want to look at it.
Yeah, there's a little flyer up there that explains that. So, but I think a really excellent opportunity for a lot of us who have been thinking about how do we even establish a baseline to understand what we're working from. And so this is a tremendous resource, an opportunity for us to gather some more information. The other item from the April meeting that I wanted to just provide an update on is the recommendation from Secretary Blumenfeld, a request that we pick 2 places and we do sort of a place-based funding analysis. So how do we look at how we as a state are making different investments into 2 given areas at that meeting? Fresno and the Tahoe Basin were raised as potential locations to do that. And so we've gone back right after that meeting and have had a couple of key staff meetings to sort of start digging in on how we would do this and are working on a short concept note that we can share. And I think there are many threads that, I'll be honest, we're trying to figure out how to both identify all the threads and then ultimately how to weave them together. But thanks to all of our member agencies who have been participating, several are going back to really just actually take a look at what is in their portfolio, so transportation and natural resources in particular, just sort of what is the funding landscape, and then bringing that back to the group so then we can look at that. So, and then the other piece of this that we've been looking at is also technical assistance. So there's sort of the funding pillar and the technical assistance question. SGC has also been working on just trying to gather an inventory of TA activities, and that is underway. So looking ahead, I think a couple of things. One is we would like to be able to provide a progress report back to you all and sort of what have we found in these 2 initial locations in August or October. I think it'll depend on the pace of work moving forward, with ideally some thoughts on what would we want to do with that information by the end of this year, so by December. I do think it would be helpful to establish a sub-working group of the council who we could just, key staff has been, as I said, is really the workhorse of this. I think we're also going to be able to tie into the Regions Rise Together work that Aegon Turplin, who's been working across SGC, OPR, and GoBiz is doing. So we have a lot out there, but I think it would be very helpful for us to have a small group that we could ping once or twice along the way to just make sure we're moving in the right direction as we develop more material to bring back to the larger council. This is actually an area where we have not done a lot of that kind of structure of work before, but that is a request from us, is that we could form a small working group.
Can you just remind us, because I always forget, what the rules are and how many people can be in a working group under Bradley Keene?
It has to be less than a quorum. I guess Doug can give us the...
Mr. Lawyer?
Yeah.
Do up to 5.
And are there rules about that we should know just before people volunteer?
Just that if you have 6 or more, you're now meeting. So we need to keep it at 5 or fewer.
Thank you. Anybody can we ask this now?
Yes. Love that.
Anyone up here now already know they want to be on the working group? I want to be on the working group, so I'm volunteering myself. Anybody else? Nicole wants to be on the working group.
And since Jared asked for it, I'm volunteering him to be on it.
All right, Jared wants to be on the working group. Anyone down
I'm
here?
very open to being on the working group if it's helpful.
All right, what is that for?
Going once.
One
going
more. Oh, yes, Alyssa.
Yes.
And I am happy to sub out if there's anyone else who is super excited, because I get to talk about this stuff all day long in my job, so let me know.
Well, and I should also add that this will in no way, everyone will still remain very engaged through the council, but then through key staff. So we're relying on key staff to help us a lot. So don't worry, everyone will be, I'm sure, hearing some updates.
And thank you. Louise, if I can just chime in on that. I know that the Tahoe Conservancy, many of us were at the Tahoe Conservancy meeting when they were starting to look at this, and they actually have already started to accumulate a nice spreadsheet of all of the funding in their area. And I think many of us on the working group will get a chance to look at their early work. And I know when they collected their numbers, they realized they had missed a lot from CAL FIRE, for example. So you really have to turn over all the couch cushions on every type of program that could be in the area. And it is a lot of work, but it's great that the Tahoe Conservancy has jumped in on it. So we will look forward to bringing that to the working group.
Yes, and they've shared some of that already with us, so that's terrific.
That's great. And one thing that I would suggest, just because we're doing it in some other areas, is looking at the current budget and seeing if we can figure out what in the budget is going to those specific regions, or sort of general, those or slightly larger regions. Because if you actually, I can just say offhand, I know of a lot going into the Tahoe region in the fire management space in particular, and a lot going into the Fresno region in both air quality and ag. So there's definitely, and of course, high-speed rail. So there's a significant amount of investment. And so it's an interesting organizing principle.
Great, thank you. So thank you all. So we'll follow up. Like I said, I think key staff will continue to do some work. So I think on that working group, I would expect to hear from us later in the summer. And so finally, I will get to our budget updates. As you know, we have a continuous appropriation from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund to support the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program. That will remain at 20%. With the trends and auctions, I'm not an economic projections person, but it looks we should have at least as much funding as we have this year, but likely more. But other items that were included in the budget were staffing for 2 programs, actually, and the first of these I want to highlight. So as you all know, SGC has hosted, in partnership with the California Department of Public Health, the Health and All Policies Task Force since 2010 when it was established. And that has always been a public-private partnership for the staff that are located at SGC. They have been funded by foundations, and we've done that in partnership with the Public Health Institute. And then CDFA has had CDPH has had dedicated staff, but you can have them too if you'd like. That's our goal, has had dedicated staff for health and all policies. And along the intention of this partnership from the very beginning was for the state to take this on as a program that we would continue to lead. And for folks who haven't followed it from the beginning, the real intention of health and all policies is to recognize the fact that what we all do affects health. It is not just about delivery of health services and health care, but it also is about the social determinants of health and these other factors that affect long-term and near-term health outcomes. And so trying to take an efficient approach to really start embedding principles of health inequity in policies across the state. And so the Health and All Policies team, this collaborative team, has really been doing that work. And we have tried through legislation and a couple of other budget attempts over the years to bring some additional positions into the state, and this year for the first time have been successful. And so I think it really is a recognition of the work that's been taken over the last 10 years or so, and the dedication of our partners outside of the state and all of the participants in the Health and All Policies Task Force, who I think have really embraced the work and advanced it. And so SGC will be bringing in 3 staff. And I think it's a really interesting time for us to step back, think about what is our role at SGC, our partnership with CDPH, and then continuing how PHI will continue to work in this space and how we'll all continue to work together. So I think a lot more to come on that, but just wanted to mark that for folks who have been engaged. I think it is a big accomplishment of that work and really a testament to the Health and All Policies team at the state level that really is, through the task force, quite big and extensive. The other staffing update is the budget includes 3 positions for us to implement Senate Bill 1072, which was signed in September. This is a bill which would establish a regional climate collaborative program at SGC. And that is, the regional climate collaboratives are intended to be investments, so it's another grant program that would invest in collaborative structures to support under-resourced communities around the state. And so I often like to think of it as investing in the people and soft institutional infrastructure, community-based organizations that can be a continued presence in communities that can help to lift up visions and ideas and projects. And ultimately, it's really getting upstream to help our most under-resourced communities start being able to get in the pipeline to access funds, whether it's CCI funds or others, but also just to help them be able to start doing the work to support the transformational actions that we're looking for around the state. We had 2 requests for that. One was funding for the program itself, for the actual grants, and then the other for the staffing. So we have 3 staff. So we will be working to fill those positions over the coming months. So of course, the big one, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is the funding for most of our programs. The Transformative Climate Communities Program was appropriated $60 million. Just for history, in round 1, we had $140 million. Round 2, we aggregated 2 appropriations and had $50 million. This is, so we're sort of landing about where we were. The number bounced around a bit. We were 40, 20, 130, 57, 60. So we're at $60 million, and I think really, as we look ahead, thinking about the program, we definitely received feedback around elements of the program that we're examining, but really thinking about how do we make the most impact with that $60 million in how we design the program, how we reach communities. And so continued commitment to evolve that program, to listen to what we are hearing, to be responsive to that, but also to continue to reach as many communities as we can. Another piece that came out around TCC, and I think we're probably guilty ourselves as we often, it's a complex program. And I think we have a lot of work to do to just make people familiar with what the program is doing. But I think we have a tremendous opportunity to bring more voices from the community who are doing the work through our planning grants and through other community initiatives that really embody the principles of TCC. So I think we'll be working more on that over the coming year around that, sort of how to continue uplifting that program. For the climate change research program, was appropriated $5 million, and as I've mentioned, we've already that team has already been out thinking about how to continue doing the engaged research investments that they've started. And then finally, there were $2 million appropriated to do the regional climate collaboratives work. And so working on thinking, and for that program, there's actually several elements which we will need to be developing, as we have with our other programs, a set of guidelines and a whole process for that. So we'll be building from scratch what that program will look like, and obviously coming back to you all as we do that.
Can you just really quickly talk about the relationship between the people and the FTEs and then that money? So is that really research focused, or what's that focus of the $2 million?
Oh, the $2 million would be actually the grants to the communities. And so essentially, this would be following the program structure we have for other programs. So we'll have program staff that are the 3 FTE that will build out the guidelines and everything and run that program. So do the outreach and build that program up for implementation. So it will be a program team, much like we have our TCC team or our AHSC team, to implement that program. And just, the bill has several requirements in it, of course. So we will be building that program. The program is, and the legislation has a 10-year time horizon. We should be awarding 2 rounds of regional climate collaborative funding over that time horizon. I think there's a lot of these things that raise questions, more questions maybe than answers, but just so you all know. So that is the structures of this would be a grant program that would fund these collaboratives. Our staff would, through outreach and engagement and work with all of our partner agencies, build out what the guidelines for that would look like. And then the other elements of this program, which these staff will also do, we are directed to develop technical assistance guidelines that would be for all state agencies to be best implementing technical assistance to support under-resourced communities. And then also working with the Department of Finance on advanced payment guidelines, which is a huge barrier to under-resourced communities. Is a reimbursement type of structure is often a big barrier to participating in programs. So there are a number of activities that those staff will undertake, and then the $2 million would be money available for grant making.
And I'm sorry to backtrack a little, but I just wanted to add my sort of public acknowledgement and gratitude to the work that the staff did in getting those 3 high-up positions. I've been with agency for about 6 years, and we've taken a couple of runs at this, and so just really acknowledge all of the hard work that went into that.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was a big team effort, so. So that is all of my update. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. Otherwise, I will pass the baton.
That was a lot. Any questions, clarifications, thoughts? Nicole?
So, per usual, I just want to talk about TCC just a little bit. First, I do want to acknowledge the tremendous effort by your team and the governor's office in trying to get us more to the original allocation, near 140 million, because again, we have 14 communities that are either, I don't know, they're different stages of the TCC program, but the point is these communities are counting on these kind of pretty significant investments, and they are systemic, they're game-changing, they're holistic, they're comprehensive. It's my favorite program just because of not only what the significant investment can do, but also the idea, the approach that not only is the plan community-driven, so that means you are getting the community involved and invested, and that means we're preparing them to be climate resilient. It's not just like money, it's actually getting people like to the table, and it's getting these institutions that often don't work together to actually get at the table and figure out how to work together, which again, if anyone listens, I mean, I don't even know how this happened, but I listened to, I don't know if it was what NPR station, but they had the 911 calls of the fire, the Cal Fire, and it was crazy to hear the disconnect between the institutions that were responsible for emergency services because they weren't communicating. They didn't use the same codes, and so they didn't know what each other was talking about. I mean, that's the worst case scenario. But the point is, like, the more we can get all of these organizations and institutions and local governments and the community talking and working together, I just feel like then we're preparing the communities as the climate crisis, unfortunately, likely gets worse. So in any case, I'm committed, as you know, Louise, to doing whatever we can to help increase the allocations to TCC. I, again, just want to say publicly that I would love to see a summit. I would love to bring the existing TCC grantees and the folks that have the planning grants and just have a more public conversation, get the speaker in, get the Senate Pro Tem in, get them to be more aware and educated. And I just looking at the geography of the planning grants that you just posted earlier, like Bakersfield, Tulare, I mean, Indio, like, you know, these, I mean, it's covering a more large swath of the state. So I feel like there's an opportunity to really get more attention and focus and excitement about the program. So anyhow, thank you for all you're doing, and we're not going to give up. Persist is my mantra. But thanks, and look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Nicole. I will say, just being at the center of all these conversations that, and I've said this to Louise, but earlier, but I do think it's really important to communicate what Nicole just said. Just the TCC program, if you don't know what it is, feels like a very small program that only affects a very few people. And so really communicating this as a model and, you know, a set of demonstration programs that can be, and we've talked about this as a council, where some of those principles can really start to be percolated through other programs as well, is incredibly important. And so I just think that message, we're all getting that message out, but we all need to get it out more. Yeah. Other thoughts on the executive director report? Congratulations on all the awards Very exciting. Although if we were Tiger moms up here, we'd say an A- is not an A.
Well, I was going to say, I know what I say when an A- comes home. What'd you miss? So anyway, so we're looking at it. We'll figure it out.
I'm totally kidding.
It's a popular response. So I appreciate just the kudos.
That's awesome. So congratulations, and the high up and regional climate collaboratives work as well. It just again like really points to this integration of these issues across areas, which is the point of this council. So. All right, I think we're going to move to everyone's favorite part of the agenda, for which we have many public comments, the AHSC program. And I think, Ryan, are you doing that? Who's doing that presentation? Oh, sorry. Great.
There we go. Good morning. I'm Craig Shields, a proud member of the AHSC team, representing the Department of Housing and Community Development. Today, we are asking Council to approve the recommendation to award $402,398,806 in fiscal year 2017-18 cap and trade auction proceeds for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program to 25 well-deserving projects. The Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program has a clear vision to fund projects that result in the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by limiting vehicle miles traveled and increasing accessibility of housing, employment centers, and key destinations through infill development and improvements to walking, biking, and transit infrastructure. What does that vision really look like? Going from this all too familiar image where people are spending several hours each day driving miles to get to their jobs and other destinations, to this, safe and affordable housing located in communities that provide easy access to jobs, schools, and other key destinations through walking, biking, and reliable, convenient transit. Each year, we begin this awards presentation with a little AHSC 101. This year, I'm really happy to provide that lesson through the lens of our accomplishments. Projects the program has funded and are providing housing and mobility improvements right now. When designing an AHSC project, the first thing an applicant has to consider is their project area type, and we have three. The first is the transit-oriented development area, which is served by high-quality transit. That's something like a light rail train or bus rapid transit. Since these are transit-rich environments, the program requires an affordable housing component in the application in addition to sustainable transportation infrastructure, transportation-related amenities, or a program component. This project, Roland Curtis in Los Angeles met their housing requirement by providing 140 units of affordable housing and included bicycle repair kiosks to meet their transportation requirement. Those kiosks provide tools necessary to perform fairly basic bicycle repairs, changing a tire, adjusting brakes, things like that. Another completed and fully occupied transit-oriented development project is 626 Mission Bay in San Francisco, which is providing 143 affordable homes for families, as well as 29 homes set aside for people who have recently experienced homelessness. The building includes multiple courtyards, a children's play area, and a separate quiet courtyard for those parents who need a little respite once in a while. The site has a density of 98 units per acre and is located just 2 blocks from the Mission Rock Transit Station, which provides access to light rail with easy connections to Caltrain and BART. Their sustainable transportation infrastructure component is a new 30-foot wide walkway that provides a safe and accessible mid-block connection between 2 key neighborhood streets and a direct link to a neighborhood playground. For those areas that are not served by light rail or bus transit, we have two project area types. The first shown here is the integrated connectivity project area, which must be served by qualifying transit like regular bus service provided by the local or regional transit authority. For these project types, the program requires a sustainable transportation infrastructure component, like the purchase of a new bus or improved bike lanes or walkways, followed by either an affordable housing or transit-related amenity component, like a bus shelter, something that makes transit safer and a little more comfortable. West Gateway Place is just across the river in West Sacramento and was our very first completed AHSC project. They met their transportation requirement by providing over 2 miles of expanded sidewalks and bike lanes, plus 7 enhanced crosswalks. West Gateway Place is now housing 73 families at various levels of affordability, but all the units are affordable. Another completed integrated connectivity project is Anchor Place in Long Beach, 75 homes for veterans and 18 homes reserved for people experiencing mental illness or homelessness, all affordable again. The primary requirement, sustainable transportation infrastructure, was accomplished through a partnership with Long Beach Transit and includes a new transit hub with great connections to the Metro Blue Line, Cal State Long Beach, the VA Medical Center, as well as job centers like Lakewood Mall and the Long Beach Airport. The transit hub does include, real-time arrival departure information systems, bus shelters, secure bike parking, and public art provided by local artists. Additionally, the project improved sidewalk and bike lanes connecting the new housing to the surrounding neighborhoods. And finally, our Rural Innovation Project area responds to concerns that projects in rural communities don't compete well against high-density urban projects. It has the same programmatic requirements as integrated connectivity projects, but it's reserved for rural communities generally with populations fewer than 40,000 people. Sustainable transportation infrastructure is the primary requirement in a rural project area, but it often looks a little different from what we see in an integrated connectivity project. For Sierra Village, shown here in Dinuba, it looks like these two cow vans that transport farm workers from a new 43-unit affordable housing development to the nearby growing fields. This is another example of a successful partnership between self-help enterprises and cow vans in Tulare County. Sierra Village provided 1 mile of new bikeways and 400 feet of new sidewalks that make getting around the neighborhood safer without getting in their cars. I've been really fortunate to visit all of these developments and meet some of the people who live there, and I would be happy to share some of their stories in a smaller group setting, maybe with a box of Kleenex at the ready, because there are some really moving stories, and it really makes us know that what we're doing is making a difference and is worthwhile. The AHSC guidelines establish targets for each of these project area types, and the applicants compete against each other within each of the project types. 35% for the transit-oriented development, 35% for the integrated connectivity projects, and 10% for rural innovation project areas, which of course adds up to 80%. The remaining 20% of available funds may be awarded to any eligible project type area, and this year the recommendation is to select the next highest ranking integrated connectivity projects, which is by far the most oversubscribed category. These projects comprise over 61% of the total funding requested, and by directing the remaining 20% of funds to integrated connectivity projects, that category of awards will comprise 56%. Just quickly, we have a multi-tiered application process that begins with application eligibility, moves through scoring, and ends with an evaluation of the project's financial feasibility. And I just want to mention, by the way, this is not a bunch of models in that photograph. This is our actual AHSC team in our application review war room. In this, our 4th round of funding, we received 47 proposals with a total request of $674 million. 9 of those applications were determined to be substantially incomplete or otherwise ineligible. I just want to note that the AHSC staff considers these determinations of ineligibility very carefully. We make every attempt to find a path forward for all applications except those that have significant material deficiencies. In this round, 38 applications requesting $610 million met those threshold requirements and were determined to be eligible for review. We're here today to ask Council to award 25 very deserving projects for just over $402 million. That leaves 13 projects that unfortunately will not be awarded in this round. We recognize the significant effort and cost involved in preparing and submitting these rather robust, as we hear, applications. So we offer each unsuccessful applicant the opportunity to have a call with AHSC staff to talk about their project and for us to give them feedback on how they might be more competitive in a future round. This is the exciting part. Today, we are crossing the $1 billion investment mark. The program has funded almost 10,000 homes across the state, and many of those homes are either under construction or housing individuals and families who were previously rent burdened, driving dozens of miles to work each day, or experiencing homelessness. The $1 billion investment will reduce carbon dioxide by 2 million metric tons, not just because of the housing, but thanks to dozens of new buses, miles of new sidewalks and bikeways. It's also taking thousands of cars off the road. I'm really honored to be part of this program and work with a really dynamic group of folks. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan Silber, who will talk about the great program projects we're recommending. Thanks.
I have one question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, why aren't there more TOD applications?
We find that the ICP category is the broadest because the TOD requirements are for the high quality transit,
Right.
like the bus rapid transit or light rail, and there just are fewer of those.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
And Ryan's going to go into the ICP, the breadth of the ICP category a little bit too.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Craig, I had one quick question too, and maybe others do too. Just on your, before we get into the recommendations, which we're all excited about, first of all, it's so inspiring seeing what this program has done. It's
Indeed.
like why we're all here. So thank you for sharing those pictures and those stories. And I think, the next opportunity for sort of a tour, I think many of us would like to participate in that. So let us know.
I would absolutely encourage that. It's
Really exciting. The other question, in terms of, you made the point that those whose applications do not succeed have the opportunity, which is great, to get feedback. Do you also use that opportunity to point them to other programs? HCD obviously has a huge variety of programs.
Right.
So do you use that opportunity to sort of say, here's another category or another set of programs?
Well, this is the first year that we have made these announcements, and then HCD has all these great programs getting ready. So yes, we are intending to have conversations with unsuccessful applicants and see how we can better connect them with other HCD funding sources, other state funding sources, really to find out a little bit more about the goals of their project. So maybe they designed a project specifically to be competitive with AHSC, but they just have a core desire or a core goal within that. So maybe they just wanted to do the housing, or maybe they really are interested in the infrastructure. So learning more about their projects will help us guide them a little bit better to other funding sources.
Any other general questions about the program before we go into the specifics?
Yeah, on this slide, the 1.1 billion, that's direct investment, right? So do we have a leverage number? So what those dollars are paired with, and then what's the total impact?
I don't know if Ryan has that
not
already.
off the top of your head,
I
but
don't
if-
have that, off the top of my head, but that's a great question. We
And then-
can.
Really appreciate you showed people, and then you made comments about people, and we always put up a lot of numbers, and we're going to come up and talk about how everything was measured and the square footage of sidewalk and all this kind of stuff and bike lanes and all that. But the real impact is, and that's why I was happy you had photographs of the people that are impacted. And I think the most impactful thing, I had the opportunity to do the ribbon cutting or be at the ribbon cutting for the Anchor Place, and
Yeah, right.
it wrecks your whole day. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I mean, in a very good way, right? I mean,
And,
it's so
and the man in my photograph was one of the speakers at that
unbelievable
ceremony.
story, and the impact that we are having on people's lives. I mean, it cuts right to the point of what we're trying to accomplish and what the governor, what the legislature is trying to accomplish with these programs. We're just impacting thousands of people's lives in just such a transformative way. And part of why I have asthma, so and my daughter was diagnosed with asthma, and I'll be damned if my granddaughter is going to be diagnosed with asthma. And so it's that personal story, that personal commitment that really brings home the dollar value. It translates it into a human value of everything that we're doing. So
Absolutely.
just really, really good work, and congratulations on how far you've come and how far we've come so far.
Well, thank you.
One thing I would just add is we are seeing a bevy of projects coming to completion, and there are many opportunities that present themselves where they would love SGC representation. So we often have opportunities, and we are happy to make them available to council members to attend, because it is hearing from these people definitely who are living in these homes makes a huge difference. I spent the better part of the afternoon in a studio apartment with someone in Walnut Creek a few weeks ago, and it was just terrific to hear how this apartment has made a difference to her. So, if people are interested, we're happy to circulate those opportunities.
And I've said this to Louise already, but let's also make sure that we're getting, every single time that happens, let's get the opportunity in front of the governor and also the legislators whose districts those are. I think that they may not be able to come. It may be hard, but just having the opportunity to see this and to have the potential to participate is really important.
And I would also add on the interconnections piece to other funding sources. Craig has agreed for this round especially, that we wanted a single point of contact, which Craig has graciously agreed to be for all of our projects, but also are exploring ways that we can formalize some of that handoff, as well as, especially as their programs are coming online, ways we can also make our programs align better for easier handoff. So just that is a work in progress, but something we're definitely very focused on.
And we're thrilled to participate in that because we feel like hearing the stories from these unsuccessful applicants will help us shape improvements to our other HCD programs and make them a little more aligned with what we've been trying to achieve in this program.
I think I have Yana and then Secretary Ross. Go ahead, Yana.
Great, I'll be brief.
Okay. Not you.
Yeah, I'll be brief. So I just wanted to convey, I think our secretary really regrets that he's not here, because this is such an exciting opportunity, and awarding these grants, as you said, has a very crucial and real world impact on people's lives. And so I know I'm preaching to the converted in this room, but we have an opportunity to increase active transportation, improve people's health, improve the air quality, and allow people better economic stability in a real way. So just wanted to convey our agency's excitement and gratitude for the staff work that you're doing. And then additionally, really excited that we're pushing for that next step of creating that warm handoff for those projects that aren't ready for this source of funding to better integrate with other sources of funding in the future. So I think we would be interested in sort of seeing how that develops as well, and supportive.
Great, thank you. That's a great comment. All right, you do have a comment, see?
Just very quickly, I'm thrilled that we found a way and an appropriate way to recognize some of the needs and disadvantages in rural communities. So it's pretty cool that Dinuba stepped up and had a great proposal. Thank you.
Great, all right, let's hear what's proposed for this year.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Craig, and hello, council members. My name is Ryan Silber. I am the program manager at the Strategic Growth Council for the AHSC program, and just want to echo Craig's sentiment that I'm very proud to be a part of this project and to be helping many of the applicants who are here today realize their projects, which I hope you all feel that same sentiment. So I'll be covering the recommended awards today. So AHSC has 2 statutory requirements for how we allocate our funding, 50% to disadvantaged communities as defined in Cal EnviroScreen, and another 50% which can overlap with those funds going towards housing. Historically and continuing into this round, we far exceed both of those statutory requirements. And we have seen a concentration of our investments going towards these historically under-resourced communities. And they are community scale investments, so beyond the housing. It's a note we want to continue on. So about 65% of those total funds are towards the direct affordable housing investment or that housing related infrastructure. So that's similar to what the governor's budget proposed with that $800 million towards that infill infrastructure. That is what the AHSC program was partially designed off of. So of those 3,000 units, the vast majority of those are affordable at a range of deep affordability up to more moderate affordability as well. And we have about 700 units for supportive services, which include services on site for individuals currently experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness or chronic homelessness. Those include job services, healthcare services, recovery. So we're very happy to support those as well. About the other third of funding goes towards transportation improvements. Those can contain anything from transit expansion through actual vehicles or lane expansion, increasing the frequency, travel demand systems. Then we have our active transportation components, which actually expand the infrastructure for sidewalks and bikeways, multi-use paths, amenities that increase the accessibility of both the transit and active transportation. So street trees, those urban greening components, bus shelters. And this doesn't include the remaining fraction of our funding between 1% and 2% that goes towards programs, which could be workforce development, active transportation. The majority of the funding in that category goes towards free or discounted transit passes for the residents of our affordable housing developments. We're happy to see a widespread distribution of the awards across the state. It's kind of hitting along our themes of this really is a style of development we can see anywhere. So we've got an award all the way up in Arcata, down to Imperial County in San Diego in the south. About 35% of the funds are going towards both Southern California and then 35% towards the Bay Area. About 15% of the funding is towards the San Joaquin Valley area, and the remaining funds going towards San Diego, the North States, and Sacramento region. Just to touch on a few notes of our efforts we're undertaking here, our technical assistance effort is once again showing out very strongly. 14 of the 19 technical assistance applicants are recommended for award. We have two veins of technical assistance in the program, one being capacity building, which is really focused on upstream project development, making partnerships between local government, transit authorities, and the housing developers themselves, and thinking about what type of development they ultimately want to see for these AHSC projects, but hopefully beyond that as well, and putting together these pipeline projects and occasionally helping craft RFPs for public land. So the other vein of technical assistance is direct application assistance, so helping these applicants actually compose that application and the associated materials. Reapplication is something we strongly encourage of each of our AHSC non-awarded applicants. We remain the largest single source of housing funding in the state, and this round, 10 of 11 of our reapplicants are recommended for award. So I think it lends to that if you do it once, learn your lessons, and can make improvements within the program in your project design, pursuing state policies to make a stronger application and actually receive that award. So actually, to get into the awarded projects, I just wanted to cover a couple examples that show a variety of what the AHSC program can do through the the openness and the diversity of application styles. So this project, the Vermont to Manchester projects, an ICP project, in LA County unincorporated region. It's an area that carries a deep history with it of racial segregation through redlining policies. The site itself has been vacant for about 30 years now following civil unrest around the Rodney King beating. There's been 3 groundbreakings here that have not come to fruition, and a history of disinvestment in the community. So now with this award, what we'll actually be seeing is 180 units of affordable housing, and this is focused on the second largest transit bus corridor in LA County, with a transit plaza going in place actually on the site as well. The site not actually part of the project itself, but will contain a boarding school for youth at risk of homelessness or having experienced or at risk of experiencing the child welfare or juvenile justice system, focusing on really creating that career pipeline into specifically transit industries, planning, engineering, a variety of those job skills. This also marks a collaboration between 2 large government entities at the local level with LA City and at the regional level with the County of LA. And some of you may recognize the aerial view. This is one of the sites that actually a couple of the council members were able to tour in Los Angeles. Another project that I'm showing here is the Twin Rivers project in Sacramento. It's a reapplicant in our ICP category. It leverages one of our Transformative Climate Community Awards made in round 2. So that award was focused on expansion of Sacramento's light rail into this River District neighborhood. This AHSC award will focus largely on the housing component, but also on station area improvements to that new light rail station, as well as expanding one of the major bus routes in that neighborhood to continue on to Sacramento City College, and reducing the headways of those buses by 50% during the weekdays and adding significant service on the weekends as well. It's also adding a large amount of pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure in a neighborhood that really needs a leg up in the infrastructure provided, but through these connected services, it's connecting this isolated community to the more amenity-rich parts of town, increasing opportunity for this low-income community, signified also with some of the programming focused around active transportation uptake targeted towards this River District low-income neighborhoods. One of our rural projects we're awarding this round, or recommended for award, is Ocotillo Springs in Brawley. So this is a town of just 25,000 residents, and I think really displays how AHSC can work in a rural community. So their housing development is really focused on family-style housing, 3 stories of 2 and 3 bedroom units, all done in a zero net energy design, which is significant in this region that's going to be, and currently does experience, extreme heat, but also to reduce resident utility bills, which is a significant cost burden for residents in the area. The transit component here is using Cal vans, which is a more flexible on-demand service, which for rural communities and smaller communities that don't have the type of population to sustain these more traditional bus or variety of rail routes, is something that we've seen a lot of success with, and getting people from A to B to C in all variety of destinations, without reliance on those individual vehicles. This city also underwent some significant community engagement, over 500 resident touch points, identifying a lot of just basic infrastructure needs. So street lighting, they'll also be implementing over 1.5 miles of sidewalks, over 2 miles of bike lanes, and urban greening all throughout the project area. This final project I'm going to show you is one of our transit-oriented developments. I highlighted this because it's really showing an AHSC development at a multimodal station. So this is at the Millbrae BART station, which is also a connection to the Caltrain system. And this vision is really a collaboration through BART and the city of Millbrae to envision what the future of the area will look like through population growth, but also the opportunities that will come with the high-speed rail connection. So there's 80 units provided on site. They're expanding the tracks through the BART system to allow for increased capacity during the morning commute hours in anticipation of that increased population as well. So there'll now be 10-car capacity on all 3 of those tracks. In addition, there are significant pedestrian and bicycle gap closures. There's going to be an overpass installed over the 101 freeway. And beyond that, a few miles of bicycle and pedestrian walkway improvements. There's 21 other great projects which we could have highlighted individually here. So not to slight any of those in the least bit, but we are very proud to be recommending all 25 of those. These are just 4 examples, and be happy to provide more information on any that spark any of your interest in the staff report.
Thank you so much, Ryan. That was a great presentation, so thank you.
I have 1 or 2 more slides. I'll cruise through these. It'll be really
Keep going.
So we have our upcoming schedule.
It's a great beginning of your presentation.
We're
excited for the next part of your presentation.
Yeah. Thank you. We really want to stress that we are a continuous program here. So round 4 marks the first completion of our annual cycle for AHSC. So it is a move to get funding out the door regularly in a predictable fashion. As I mentioned, we are the largest single source of housing funding in California. So getting that funding out in a manner that our applicants can understand when guidelines are coming out, when the application period is opening, when awards will be made. So this schedule up here for the next round basically mimics what occurred in this current round of funding. Some of the major themes we're going to carry on through into round 5. You've heard about now mentioning this project pipeline and focusing on capacity building, the predictability of the schedule. We really also want to maintain some semblance of guidelines consistency so that our projects can continue to plan further up into the pipeline and start thinking about this sustainable transit-oriented design even earlier than we've been able to see in previous rounds. So we're continuously funded through 2030, waiting until the continuous appropriations are revisited, but we have high hopes. And so that means 11, 12 more years of AHSC funding. So we encourage our applicants to continue thinking about us as a secured source of funding for them. We also are aiming towards alignment with some of these other HCD programs that are now funded, some of their legacy programs, so that if you are applying for AHSC, in addition for us to encourage you to reapply, we also want to make sure that you have access and are aware of these other funding sources that are now available. All of our projects that pass our feasibility review are transit-oriented and dense infill housing for affordable rents, and they are shovel-ready. They have secured funding, they have all their environmental clearances, and we want to see them built, whether it's through our program or other means. So as we noted earlier, we're focusing on establishing those touch points with our unsuccessful applicants to really get them built out. Our future coordination, we're going to continue on with our strong technical assistance program and reaching even further into the state areas that we haven't seen so far be awarded. We also have a renewed focus on increasing our reach to tribal applicants. We have them as eligible applicants currently, though we haven't actually seen an application yet. So we're continuing to see how we can really garner interest and make our program more suitable for their needs. So our recommendation is that you award 25 excellent projects at just over $402 million in support of these multiple state planning priorities.
It was still a great presentation.
Thank you.
Continued to be a great presentation. Thank you, Ryan.
Sure.
My slide decks always end with the next step slide, and then I talk about it, so I always think that's the end of the slide. So it's my fault. I'm sorry about that. So we're going to do discussion up here, and then I do have a number of public comments before we vote. So Secretary Crowfoot.
Just to underscore Mike's point about understanding the level of other resources that are being brought in and what we're leveraging. It's remarkable, 10,000 units or approaching 10,000 units, and that's 10,000 changed lives. I think it's also daunting when you consider the housing deficit we have, upwards of 3 million units, and that represents about 3% of those units. So just understanding how we can stretch the state funding as far as possible. Every unit is progress, but just really how we can try to achieve the scale that the housing crisis demands.
Yeah, and I neglected to address that comment. We don't know finitely the level of leverage funding, though we have a wealth of data that we could look into. But anecdotally, we see leverage funding, our awards are for 20 million. We see leverage funding anywhere from some of our smaller projects at 5 million up to our larger projects at $180 million. So huge projects, and we incentivize this leverage funding to really see that state dollar stretch into larger projects and make more of an impact.
Yeah, then I'll just say, obviously, that there's a need to ensure the quality of the project. Just as a council member, I'll be interested moving forward in terms of your thinking around how we can maximize the number of quality units that are built with the program's resources.
That's a great question. And I do think that thinking about those numbers, I was thinking about that during the presentation too, and it's important to remember that these units are all affordable and all with very specific set of criteria, although I think that that's important across the board, but that the 3.5 is sort of a much wider set of categories, and some of those will be totally privately funded. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation and for all the work from the team. I think it would just be interesting as we move forward, seeing some of these successful projects open up, hearing from the project managers themselves over time on more success stories and thinking about their operating expenses. So when you think about these affordable homes, what are their operating expenses over time? If they're willing to share that with us, that'll also help us understand the amount of financing that we need from the state outside of this program when we're looking at other HCD programs and looking at the balance of those 3.5 million units. So if you have willing participants who are, able to come in and talk us through the expenses to really get this on the ground so we can dig into the, the true cost per unit and the role that the state can play versus the role that other forms of capital can play and the asks we might make of the federal government, if there's room to do that. I mean, I think it would be just great to really understand the universe of funding needs and the availability of other funding sources. We could even make this sort of conversation available for private capital and for philanthropic organizations who want to dive into helping solve our large state problem.
Thanks, that's a great idea. And I would say just Cal HFA as well as HCD in terms of sort of thinking through those financing questions and the larger sort of, as Secretary Crowfoot was saying, what is the need? What are the barriers? Sort of which piece does this fill? How are we leveraging it? Would be incredibly helpful. And how does that connect in? We always talk about the housing and transportation strategies and health strategies being interconnected, but how are those being interconnected in other places as well? That's a great idea. Secretary Russ, Nicole.
This is when we're making our overall comments. Because I just want to highlight the San Diego project. I can't believe you did not choose it as one of your 4. I'm so disappointed. But no, it is an extraordinary project that we're investing in for permanent supportive housing, very low income and low income. With the bike lanes, the protected bike lanes, which is like a huge focus of the environmental community. So we're hugely excited about that. But also just want to thank Louise because San Diego has historically not received our fair share, as the Senate Pro Tem has pointed out to me, and really grateful that you all are going to be coming down to Sandag and meeting with all the planning directors of all our cities so that we can start creating that managed pipeline so we are more competitive during this process, especially as I just learned the funding pot is only going to grow. So we definitely want to make sure that we are prepared and taking advantage. And just to make a macro comment about housing. Obviously, again, I'm sure Mike could concur as someone who works in the communities. The NIMBY movement is strong as the legislative outcomes probably bear out. And one of the areas that I'm noticing, there's the NIMBY, the YIMBY, whatever. But, my organization is really focused on climate, and the disconnect the community has, and we're working on it and doing our outreach and education between that climate policy is housing policy, the housing policy is climate policy, is not quite getting there. I actually think it is, when there are polls done, and this is again just San Diego, so it's just a snapshot, but when the community hears about climate solutions and climate action, the poll numbers are through the roof, which is encouraging, which is really helpful for our electeds to do the right thing on our climate plans. But what's not being communicated is that housing policy piece of the climate solutions. But I feel there's an opportunity. I say it more as just like, I think there's a messaging opportunity that I just encourage the state to know about, that just, and even with the governor, to make that connection stronger, that this is a a climate solution. I mean, I think the housing crisis has been conveyed, but like that those two things actually are, interconnected, is something that's an opportunity for us to continue to get more acceptance around building more infill housing in communities. But overall, super exciting. And also excited about Imperial County's project as well, because San Diego and Imperial counties are often viewed as kind of partners. So thank you for that project as well.
Thanks, Nicole. That's a great set of points, and totally agree with you on the housing climate connection. Go ahead, Mike.
Just a couple comments. Very pleased with the distribution, the geographic distribution and the categorical distribution. I think you did a great job on that. Happy to see the impact on the technical assistance. Happy to see the number of reapplications. I think that just makes the application stronger. So I'm very happy to see that. And then you talked about the pipeline. So what's your gut sense on the pipeline? Looking at it from the outside, it feels like a big bubble is coming because of all the technical assistance work, because of the work that ILG is doing, because of all the work you're doing. It feels like awareness is up, applications are going to be up. Are you getting that sense, or what's your feeling?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, tough for us to tell, because there is a little bit of diverted interest with these other funding sources available, but we're also keen to acknowledge the ways that they could leverage each other. So while we focus on getting the AHSC dollar to stretch further, it also makes some of these asks more competitive if there are other sources of funding that maybe make the AHSC funding request less. So we do truly hope that there will be a lot of projects in the pipeline evolving now. We're aware of many upstream still going, reaching into future rounds beyond round 5 too. So gauging the readiness of these proposals is a little bit difficult for us to do. I guess this is a plug also for all the eager ears listening now. You've heard it kind of alluded to a bit. We have a whole lot of money coming, again, available next round. So start thinking about round 5 projects for any of our many developer collaborators in the audience.
I just have one follow-up point question too. Is there a measure, or do you look at sort of this, I don't know what to call it, like a tipping point or a sort of catalytic factor? Because so I'm a city manager on my full-time job, and we can tell in certain areas, like if we can just get one project, it'll sort of crack the seal on that corridor or in that neighborhood, and it'll have a real, like the inverse of the broken window effect. It'll have a pretty immediate economic and catalytic effect. So are we looking at that, or is there a way for us to look at that?
I think it's not something we currently look at, though we've, as an entire staff at SGC, have expressed an interest in better analysis of the impact of our programs. So really seeing outcomes oriented analysis now, especially as we see with AHSC, we are now completing our 4th round of funding, and as Craig touched on, seeing a lot of these projects actually built out. So what's been the change in these neighborhoods? Have there been other significant developments as well? What's been the change to the demographics as well? So we have many questions, and we're thinking about different ways to leverage state resources to really analyze these impacts, because also the impact of what we're doing and lessons learned from that could really be lessons learned for many other investment programs, and thinking about what sort of models we want to implement across the state.
On this side?
Kate, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to make a quick clarification on the recommendation. For folks who have taken a look at the staff report, Appendix A1 contains the list of recommended projects. It also includes at the bottom a substitute or alternate project, which was our next highest scoring project. So the recommended action would also include that if funds become disencumbered, we can fund down the list for that additional project. I just wanted to make that very clear in the action we're asking the council to take.
Thank you. That's great. Karen? No, I actually want to hear comment before we do the motion. Just really quickly, sorry, Ryan, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to note for some of our awardees out in the audience, we have a big faux check that we have available for you all if you want a picture opportunity. It's silly. Anyways, yeah, that's all.
I think it's a dry erase check, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's very cool.
Unfortunately, won't
We
be able to
all
catch
need a dry erase check. The only thing, I do want to do public comment before we do the motion, but the only thing I wanted to say before it was just to underscore something that Ryan said, but I want to underscore it, which is there's a lot of discussion out there about what will happen to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund or Cap and Trade program after 2020. I just want to underscore that the AHSC program is a continuous appropriation. It's continuous through 2030. So this program is solid and nothing is happening with it until unless there's a change to that existing structure. But under the current structure, it is continuous through 2030. So. All right, I would love to hear public comment. We have a number of people. I'm going to contain comments to 3 minutes just because we do have a number of comments, but we do want to hear from you. And we want to hear from Sally Greenspan first.
Great. Good morning, and thank you to Chair Gordon and all the members of the council for the opportunity to submit comment today. My name is Sally Greenspan. I work for Enterprise Community Partners. We are a national affordable housing and community development nonprofit. We have been deeply engaged with the AHSC program since its inception. We worked as part of the coalition that led to the creation of the program. We continue to be very engaged with advocacy to support and protect the funding for the program. And we also have been involved as a technical assistance provider since round one of the program. Altogether this year, we worked on 20 out of the 25 awarded projects. And we are honored to be one of the SGC funded TA providers. And we work with a team of TA providers around the state to provide technical assistance to lower capacity applicant teams to ensure they receive the support they need to participate in this complex but very rewarding program. So we would like to start by extending our congratulations to all of the awarded projects, obviously supporting the motion that is before you. We also wanted to just share a couple of observations. First off, we'd like to mention how dramatically we have witnessed the sophistication of these applications amplify and increase over time. This year, we saw some of the most sophisticated scopes of work, some of the most ambitious scopes of work that we've ever seen before coming forward in terms of, obviously, the housing is very sophisticated and important, but the non-housing scopes of work have really developed. We've seen more substantive bike, more substantive ped, incredible transit components, more and more non-housing partners coming to the table every year. So we just wanted to call that out because we think it's really amazing. We've also seen the greenhouse gas scores increase rather dramatically. I did just a quick back of the envelope, and with the data that we have, the full data set for this round is not public yet, but on the applications we worked on, we saw greenhouse gas scores almost double across the board in all categories. I mean, that's an incredible uptick. And it's a bit of a double-edged sword because it's both amazing to see that outcome. Ultimately, it speaks to the goals of this program, but it also indicates how the level of competition is increasing and the challenges that applicants face in trying to come to the table and be successful. So I would like to just end by alluding to one of the recommendations that's in the staff report and that Ryan just spoke a little bit to, which is very important, I think, to consider. And this is about the alignment of the different funding sources.
It's okay, you can have a couple.
May I continue? Thank you. And so we are having conversations in real time with dozens of potential applicants for round 5. And there is, a real concern about making sure that AHSC is aligned with some of the other HCD funding sources. Right now, the other HCD funding sources, especially MHP, which just released its NOFA earlier this week, is actually a richer funding source for affordable housing than AHSC is currently. And so we know the staff is looking at this, and we've been so thankful for how collaborative and communicative and amazing the entire SGC staff and HCD staff is to work with on this program. And we want to thank them and you for considering that issue seriously, because I think it'll be really important for the success of the next funding round. And so with that, I'd just like to say, we're honored to be part of this program. We think it's truly transformative. Thank you to everyone in this room for all of your work.
Thank you, Sally. I have William, I think it's Paveo next.
Paveo it is. Thanks. I'm Bill Paveo, and I spent most of my career at HCD, culminating as Deputy Director over their Programs Division, and then spent about the last 10 years of my career as the Executive Director at TCAC. But I'm here today as a board member with the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing, better known as SCAMF, and I want to talk about that 26th project, the project that is recommended as a substitute project, West Carson Villas project. And I wanted to urge you to consider forward committing dollars to that deal and getting it going right away rather than waiting for an outcome regarding the other recommended 25. Coming out of TCAC, it wasn't uncommon for that agency to announce the availability of resources, and yet at the end of the day, if there was a good, compelling reason to go beyond that, they would occasionally do it. I know you're probably consulting legal counsel. I know you've received some correspondence from the County of Los Angeles urging you to go ahead and commit to that deal today. And I guess I would just hearken to some good legal advice I got from a great state attorney once, and that was to point out that, look, agencies like yours really kind of have 3 responsibilities: an administrative responsibility, but also a legislative responsibility. That is, you create rules, either regulations or guidelines, and then finally a kind of a judicial responsibility, meaning use your judgment. And I guess I'm petitioning you today to use that 3rd authority and exercise your judgment, especially as the deciding council, and go ahead and pre-commit to that 26th project. It would result in great carbon reduction outcomes, of course. It scored well in your system, but it would also provide, among other things, 65 units of supportive housing to persons experiencing homelessness. And you're probably aware, Los Angeles County just concluded their point-in-time count. Their homeless population is really burgeoning. They've got a crisis, a nationally recognized crisis in the county. And so this project would be an effort to accelerate addressing that crisis. It would also be developed by Path Ventures, a very good affordable housing developer, supportive housing developer in Southern California. And we think the greater public good would be gained by just going ahead and committing resources to that project today. So I urge your consideration of the county's recommendation that you do so. SCAMF endorses that recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you. I have questions about the mechanics of that, but I'm going to wait on them for other comments, but then we can go back to that question. Tyrone Roderick Williams is next.
I'm Tyrone Roderick Williams, Director of Development at the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency and Director of the Sacramento Promise Zone. I also serve on the California Disadvantage Advisory Group that serves the California Energy Commission as well as the California Public Utilities Commission. But I'm here today to just say thank you, first of all, to the staff from the Strategic Growth Council for all of their assistance and support that they provided, and also to our team. We have an incredible team, and some of them are here. I'd like for them to stand as I address the council to acknowledge who they are and the incredible work. We want to say thank you. This project, the Twin Rivers project, as well as the Rail Yards project, is located in the Sacramento Promise Zone. Some of you may know, California is the only state in the country that has 4 Promise Zones. But we all understand that Sacramento's leading the pack. And this is, it gives us an opportunity not only to leverage housing, health, education, jobs and job training, and sustainable community development. So our application has included housing. It's included support for transit-oriented development. It does support jobs and job training. It is contributing to the health and the vitality of our residents, both now and those who are in the future. So I first want to just say thank you. And again, not only is this in the Promise Zone, but under the new initiative, under this current presidential administration, it is in opportunity zones. And so it supports the opportunity to attract private investment to support the work that goes on as well. I'd welcome any of you and all of you to join with us in touring the great work that's going on in Sacramento that's funded by the Strategic Growth Council. Earlier this year, we were awarded $23 million from the TCC grant that's looking even at a broader area and all of those items that we discussed. But we're just glad, just like San Diego, that finally Sacramento has come to the attention of others. And we appreciate your work and look forward to you joining us in ribbon cuttings that conclude in affordable housing being built and lives being changed. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you. We're going to hire you as a spokesperson, I think, for this program. That was great. Thank you so much. And thanks to the team also. I know this stuff takes a lot of people and a lot of effort. So thank you guys. I've got Lachelle Dozier.
Good morning. I always hate to follow Tyrone. I was like, oh, they called him first. But I am Lachelle Dozier, the Executive Director of the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. And again, I would also like to echo his comments and thanks to the staff at SGC. This is also a better time for us than last year. We were unfortunately below the line, but we did have an opportunity to take advantage of the technical assistance and really make sure that we put forth our best effort. One of the things I really would like to highlight is the fact that this is an opportunity for California to really leverage a lot of funds. Our particular project does pull down a great amount of federal funding. And one of the things that helps me advocate for that funding is talking about how California is really stepping up, is really committing to affordable housing. And they kept saying, yeah, but we don't see that funding yet, Lachelle. And so now I will be able to go back and really to talk to the people at the federal government who are making these funding decisions, that California is where the investment really should go, that affordable housing is something that is a huge priority for this governor, and that we are really doing exciting things. The other thing I really wanted to talk about is the fact that sometimes when you're in that position and you are making decisions to guide policy and behavior, that is exactly what has happened to our particular project. It has made us really rethink how we build out not just the housing, but the entire community. And that is something, I've been working in this field for over 20 years. We've been talking about smart communities, sustainability, but when you put the money there, that's where the changes are made. And so we're really excited that we're able to take advantage of that. We're able to create a really integrated neighborhood, and also the focus on all of these things is always our residents. The people that you are funding, on average, a family of 3 only make $13,000 a year. Those are the people that we have had to relocate, and that once we build this next block of housing, will come back, and those are the families that we work very, very hard at SHRA to help change their lives. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think you did pretty well following Tyrone there. That was very impressive. I don't like following either of you. That's tough. Thank you so much. Claudia Monterosa, it looks like. This is where LA is going to tell us that they are the most important region in California.
Good afternoon, or no, it's still good morning. Claudia Monterrosa, Director for Public Policy and Research at the Housing Los Angeles Community Investment Department. We are the housing lender for the City of Los Angeles, and on behalf of the city, we applaud the Strategic Council and Housing Community Department for their tremendous leadership and vision as we conclude the 4th round of funding. I am so delighted to be here before you to fully support the Strategic Growth Council staff funding recommendations for the City of Los Angeles projects. We are so thrilled to be recommended to receive $84.9 million in funding for 5 projects. These awards come at a very critical time as our city continues to face a persistent crisis, and this funding will enable the city to advance critical, key, large developments that will create much needed affordable housing for families, homeless individuals, veterans, and low-income artists. We have such a great variety of projects, all located in disadvantaged communities or in low-income census tracts. And I do want to make a point that total, the 5 projects, their total development cost is about $418 million. So we are actually leveraging about almost $5 per every $1 of AHSC funding that we are receiving. So we are also trying to maximize to the best our resources. As a co-applicant for all 5 projects, the city will be responsible for the implementation of the grant funding for the STI and TRA components, which will further advance our mayor's sustainability and climate change goals. The city will also leverage our Measure HHH funding, which is the $1.2 billion initiative that we have, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, our managed pipeline, and our land development projects. Bringing these critical needed resources and really realizing and completing these projects. The 4th round of funding represents the culmination of months of planning and hard work and deep commitment by an interdepartmental city AHSC team to support, and also to the support of the mayor's office, council members, the diligent work of the affordable housing developers, and the technical assistance provided by enterprise community partners. This truly is an amazing team working across multiple departments to get this project, each application to fruition, and to be the most competitive and complete application that we can submit. As we gratefully accept these funds, I would like to highlight one of our groundbreaking partnerships with our co-application with the County of Los Angeles in Bridge Housing. This is for the Vermont-Manchester project, and it is a first time that we are entering into this kind of multi-jurisdictional joint agreement for the AHSC program. Together, this project will create 180 affordable housing units, and it does have Measure HHH funding as well. I want to personally thank the wonderful SGC staff, Ryan and Coral, as well as Craig and Jim from HCD, and all the dedicated staff from both of these organizations. They have always been available, responsive, and ready to assist, and we look so much forward to bringing in this next set of pipeline projects. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much for those comments. Also, in LA, I have Alfredo Medina.
Good morning, or now soon to be afternoon, Chairwoman and Strategic Growth Council members. My name is Alfredo Medina, and I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. And while we understand that today's proposed action includes the West Carson Villas project as a substitute project, I am here to respectfully request that the West Carson Villa project be considered as part of the funding proposal that is in front of you. This important project would create 100 critically needed, supportive, and affordable housing units. And we thank the council that the Vermont-Manchester Transit Priority Project is proposed to be awarded funding today. We strongly urge the council to also consider funding, as I mentioned, for the West Carson Villas project. The West Carson Villas project is a shovel-ready project that is ready to move forward. The county has been working with SGC staff and has recommended that this project be designated as a substitute project, as I mentioned, which would be awarded if one of the 25 projects recommended was not able to move forward. While West Carson met all the eligibility requirements and submitted a timely application, it is our understanding that the project was just a few points away from joining the fully funded projects. As I am sure that you are all aware, the Los Angeles County continues to face unprecedented homelessness and an affordable housing crisis. And on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we strongly urge that all efforts be made to fund this noteworthy project so that construction for these supportive and affordable housing units can move forward. We thank all your efforts, and we hope that this is considered in today's actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just two more public comments, and then we'll get to discussion. Herman Perez.
I guess it's good midday. Hi, Madam Chair. I'm Herman Perez. I'm with Madera, and we so support you're taking a look at smaller communities in rural areas because of all those people that lined up before us. These are giants compared to us. Nevertheless, we have problems, we have issues, and we need help. And I think this proposal was a great one because it brought our community together as well to put it together. So everybody's got a piece of the rock in this, and how much money is in total is a great question, because if you added what all the partners in this proposal brought together, you know, you're probably looking at 3 to 4 times that allocation that you're giving. So we appreciate the look at rural areas. Our project, you know, while it serves 48 really needed families in our community, is also going to be a catalyst in that part of town to also cause other growth to come with it. Very much as a major industry comes in and things grow around it, we anticipate that this project's going to be the same thing. So I think over the next 5 years, probably going back and looking at this, you'll see a whole new part of town in that immediate area with new transit, sidewalks, bike trails. Everything will be included in this project, so it's great. We're excited. Unbelievably happy. I mean, I'm trying to contain myself up here, okay? But we want to thank you for that. We want to make sure that we support your policies because I think they address the same things that the communities need and that are looking for. You know, we're always saying, where can we go get some funds to help us with that? Your staff, I'd have given them an A+, so I can't figure it out. You know, I don't get it, but yeah, if you need a letter of support to get that A+, we'll get in line. So obviously, even though you haven't voted, we wholeheartedly support the endorsement of our project and hope you vote in our favor. This is Linda Shaw, who's with our Housing Authority.
I'm the executive director for the Madera Housing Authority. President Perez just stole my thunder. I was going to tell you or say to you that one of the questions that came up from the dais earlier was about what kind of impact would it have on the community. And we are so grateful for this opportunity because we will actually change the face of our whole downtown with this project. And that means a lot because our downtown needed a facelift. And it's needed one for years and years and years. So thank you very much for your consideration of our application. And thanks to everybody. Thanks to everybody who was involved.
Thanks so much, both of you from Madera. And I think just the point you made about how important the process itself is in bringing people together across communities is a really important point. I wanted to give folks up here a chance to ask questions or make comments. Secretary Corford.
I just wanted to ask maybe staff to come back up and address the project in Los Angeles County and the request on behalf of that project to be considered for some sort of pre-approval or advance funding, and maybe just ask you to provide a little more context and then ask SGC staff around any precedent for that type of action.
Yes, so this substitute project, West Carson Villas, was our next top scoring ICP project. So following our discretionary funding methodology, they would have been the next awarded. The substitute project, to elaborate a bit more on that, would be awarded funding if other funds became available via a disencumbrance of a previously awarded AHSC project. So there could be funds relinquished due to not meeting AHSC criteria or other external circumstances to projects, and those funds would be made available if they substantially met the West Carson Villas funding request, basically if they would meet our shovel readiness criteria by receiving whatever that amount of funding would be, and those funds would be available until our next funding round became available or came out in late October or early November.
I think my brain is not working. Can I just clarify, the proposal you've given us to vote on already includes discretionary funds for the next set of IHP projects, is that right? And then this is the one that's just below the line of those projects that are funded by the discretionary fund, is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can address other questions.
Can you address the precedent question that Secretary Crowfoot asked?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So there's nothing in the statute that limits our funding for a funding round to a single fiscal year. In round 3, our auction proceeds were low, so we reached forward into what would have been around 4 auction proceed quarter and brought that funding forward. So there's that little kind of precedent. Also, between rounds 1 and 2, we did something similar to this, where we forward funded. So
I think an important distinction to make is that was reflected in the notice of funding availability. And so I do think we have, and I've been conferring with Doug, our counsel here, I do think there are some legal elements of this that we need to explore relative to the notice of funding availability that was put out. So I actually think there are some questions here we would need to explore further.
And can you just, I think you may have mentioned this, but just elaborate on when the next tranche of funding becomes available? Because I'm really encouraged that applicants that sort of just miss award are invited to reapply, and looks like they're having relative success doing so. But what would be, in essence, the delay on a quote-unquote shovel-ready project if it had to wait for the next tranche?
So we're basically on a recurring annual cycle now. Our next NOFA will be issued November 1st, and then applications will be due in February of 2020, and then we'll make awards in June. So basically a year from now.
And the other sources of funding that we are looking at as a potential supplement to the AHSC program and directing some of our unsuccessful applicants towards include the infill infrastructure grant program, the transit-oriented development grant program, the multifamily housing program, all administered by HCD, with funding coming online and being available prior to then.
Wait, do you want to?
Well, I would just lastly, what's the precedent with substitute projects actually getting awarded funding as a result of disencumbrance?
Well, this is our first round actually designating a substitute project.
Got it.
Though we have seen some disencumbrances through our previous rounds, which in total may amount to the amount substantial enough to award the West Carson Villas project, though we're in a condensed time frame here. But also, on the other hand, we have more projects than ever in the awardee pipeline.
Got it. I mean, I'm sympathetic to the project and the project proponents, and it seems like by designating them for the first time as a substitute project, I infer that you find it a worthy project that could and should be funded. I also note Louise's note of caution as it relates to legal issues if we were to take some action to essentially pre-advance commitment of funding. So given those legal cautions, I'm disinclined to suggest that we do that, but would very much like to better understand moving forward our ability to do this, because it seems like in this case, boy, if we could help that project get in the ground a year earlier than otherwise, that would be very helpful.
Is there some mechanism we could use on our vote today to say if your legal discussions come to a place where you think that there is a potential to do this, that we could do it? I mean, I don't know what our options are here. I think, I don't know that everybody agrees with this, but I'm just going to ask, what are our options in terms of a vote today? Because we're obviously not going to come back on another vote after your legal discussions.
Right. I mean, you'd have to take an action that could be sufficiently sort of reached where we would not be taking council action on your behalf, so that there'd be enough direction from council that whatever action you take today, the determination isn't pushed to staff to make these awards, that it's still a council determination. So evaluating the sort of legal issues around that, I would not feel comfortable making a legal call without bringing it then back to council to make that the final determination.
And when do we next meet? Is it August? No.
27th.
Yeah.
August 27th?
Well, I think that we were just conferring that perhaps you can look into those legal questions, identify legally appropriate options for us regarding this project, and then if there is a pathway for us to take action that could advance commitment for this project, then we could consider doing so at our next meeting in August.
Sure.
No, that hit it exactly what I thought.
And I do want to note that I think this is not that the fact that staff designated this as a substitute project explicitly is why I think we're talking about it in a way we would not normally talk about projects below that line. There is a quantitative approach to these projects, as we all know, and that designation, I think, puts this project in a specific category. So I just wanted to note that for future, so this doesn't become a precedent for everybody who isn't above the line, but a very specific approach.
Because there's always a line, right? We just moved the line down once, so now there's a new line, and then it says.
I think it's a recognition of the high quality of the projects, but also when funds have become disencumbered, we roll them into the next NOFA. And this is a way that we could much more expediently put it into a shovel-ready project. And that was the intention of this designation, as opposed to then getting that money back and waiting. And I just want to really urge caution, because there is a very strong, very transparent scoring process. And I just really want that we all, as a council through public process, have agreed to. And I just want everyone to keep that in mind as we think, because all of the projects, as we've noted, that are not recommended for funding are very good, excellent projects that meet threshold, that are reducing greenhouse gas emissions, that are providing affordable housing units. So I just want to take this into the full context, and really the intention behind this designation was that we could very expediently get them funds should they become available. And so that I just want that context in there.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And just to add to the conversation about this being precedential, I mean, I think it's great, as Kate noted, that this is identified as the alternate, and that's why we're having this discussion. But you think about all of the competitive programs within the council, we look at a number of programs that are scored, whether it's SALC or the research program, and so we just need to be very careful that whatever decision that we make or however we proceed on this, we're specific about why we're doing it, that it refers only to this program or the funding availability of this program, again, encumbered versus disencumbered funds. So I just want to make sure that however we write the decision, it is specific to AHSC and doesn't open the door or set a precedent for dropping the line down in other programs because of these very open, transparent, and public processes.
Right, I just want to echo that exactly. The reason I'm really interested in reconsidering is, one, the legal determination, and then the fact that it was designated as a substitute. I don't want any perception that there was some influence outside of the process and the technical process that you all went through. I think one of the key reasons for having public members appointed onto this panel is to ensure that the process stays apolitical, and I applaud staff for the way that you've approached this. And so those are the two reasons why I want to reconsider or look at this.
Other thoughts from the dais on this question or on any of the rest of the proposal? Does anyone want to make a motion? Carefully worded motion?
Well, I'll make a motion for the action that's in the report to approve staff's recommendation to award up to $402 million, $398,806 in cap and trade funding for the 2017-18 Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program to 25 projects supporting greenhouse gas emissions reductions and related co-benefits, with the additional request that staff explore the legal ramifications and provide direction back to the board at our next meeting with regard to the recommended substitute project.
Do we have a second?
I'd second it.
Can we do a roll call for this vote, please?
Conrad Seda,
In support.
Jana Olson,
In support, yes.
Lisa Kanovi,
Support.
Kate Gordon,
Support.
Michael Flad,
Support.
Wade Crowfoot,
Support.
Karen Ross,
Support.
Nicole Capritz.
Support.
Motion passes 8-0.
Great.
Abstentions? Oh, everyone said that.
Nope, that was all of us. Congratulations to everybody in the room and also to staff for just such incredible work here. We really appreciate it. We know this is a lot of work and a lot of time, and we really appreciate everything you do. Great, thank you. Thank you also for the public comment. It's one of the best parts of this process, frankly, so thank you for that. We have another item, item 7, which is to discuss the technical assistance program update from Ina, I believe. You guys aren't going to stay and listen to us talk about technical assistance? What are you thinking?
I will just say, I think the timing of this is one, just to get folks familiar with the program, also given the impact that TA, in particular, we've seen through AHSC. But we did just want to give folks an update on where we are, because 1 year ago is the meeting at which we approved the allocation for technical assistance, which included the innovative CDFA program. So this is really just meant to be an introduction, and then we'll have much more on TA at future meetings in specific contexts.
Thank you, Louise, for that context. My name is Ina Lupin. I'm the Community Assistance Program Manager at the Strategic Growth Council. And as Louise said, we recently, a year ago, gave an update and just wanted to give you some highlights. So I'll go through this very quickly. I know a couple of you need to leave a little early. So I'll just try to go through quickly, and you can stop me and ask if you have questions as I go through. So the technical assistance program is really focused on trying to support disadvantaged and low-income communities in applying for California climate investments programs. The goals of the technical assistance program are threefold. We focus on direct application assistance and implementation assistance, really focused on specific CCI projects. And we also do capacity building work that's a little bit more broad and upstream, trying to help with partnership development, some early project scoping, and general education about CCI programs. And our third goal is really to help sort of integrate CCI programs across all of these different programs on the ground so that communities can really understand how they can fit well together and how they can be used to really support community needs. So just to go through the history a little bit of this program, in 2015, $500,000 was allocated for technical assistance, particularly for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities program. And then in 2016, we got $2 million to support the more broad suite of California climate investments programs. Just last year in 2018, we received another $2 million. And then last year in June, the council decided to allocate $5 million of SGC's continuous appropriation to also support technical assistance. So this slide shows sort of all of the different programs that we've been able to support through technical assistance to date. As you'll see, the ones that have asterisks on them are actually all ones that we're currently wrapping up. Many of them are pilots, and so we're working with agencies, administering agencies, to try to think about what we can do moving forward to continue this work. And so these are actually all wrapping up just in May and June, so there's been a lot of work going into sort of wrapping up those contracts. So I wanted to just go through and give you a few examples just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what technical assistance is. It's really tailored to each specific CCI program. And so they all look a little bit different because they're trying to get at different goals for different programs in different communities. So really focusing first and foremost on our sort of veteran technical assistance program, which you've already heard a significant amount about. But just to give you a sense of the history of it, we've now done 3 rounds of technical assistance through AHSC and served 69 applicants. And that would be just in the direct application assistance. As Ryan mentioned earlier, we do direct application assistance, but also capacity building workshops in which we bring different stakeholders together at roundtables regionally to really think about how they can start to build some of those partnerships and build specific projects locally. I believe that Ryan mentioned this earlier also, but 14 of the 19 applicants that received technical assistance were successful in this round. And then just to give an example, downtown Coachella Net Zero Housing and Transportation Collaboration Project in this round, they applied in round 2, but then this round they scored 24 points higher. And part of that was due to technical assistance. It's important to mention also that they had technical assistance in round 3 as well. But really, we're trying to see how this pipeline of projects helped with technical assistance can really be moving forward. So this is a really great project. It's a robust partnership between the City of Coachella, Sunline Transit, and Calvans. 105 units of affordable housing in the downtown area. Creates a bus hub, 4 buses, and 40 van pools to serve the region. So a great, very exciting project that we're very happy to support. Next, I'll talk a little bit about the TIRCP Technical Assistance Program. The Bus to Move poster is maybe what you're laughing about. And so each one of these, again, I'll say, I'm just gonna highlight one of them, but they were 4 really, really great implementation projects that we supported through technical assistance. And so this one in particular was really focused on transit destigmatization. This was an event that they did in Reading. So this one, again, was focused on TIRCP awardees, and we worked with 4 transit agencies and local CBOs who were compensated for their time in working with local transit agencies to do a number of different things that would really help ensure benefits to these projects to communities, particularly to support priority populations' access to these transit improvements. And so they were things from marketing and outreach to community impact assessments and sort of working on plans and strategies to maximize benefits. And so this is one particular example that the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority was able to do, which was they were able to work with Job Corps to create a work plan and curriculum for a work-based learning internship program for local youth in connection with the BART extension that they're going to be doing. And so this is really great because particularly, as we all know, in the Bay Area, there are a lot of cost of living is very expensive, and so being able to really ensure that the communities that are the most vulnerable are able to benefit economically from these investments is a really important goal of this work. And then lastly, I'll just go to the SALC program, technical assistance. This is relatively new. We're just starting to kick it off. This was focused on the SALC planning grants, and particularly with a recognition that we weren't getting as many applicants for the planning grants as we had wanted. And so we were really trying to do some outreach around this program and help support applicants to apply. We also, sort of more broadly for the program, weren't getting as many applications from the San Joaquin Valley and Southern California, and so that's been a real focus area for this technical assistance. This one is kind of unique in that it really helps support applicants through all of the phases of the project. So we just wrapped up doing outreach workshops this last week, and then we'll support 3 applicants moving forward with direct application assistance, and then after awards, we'll be helping with implementation assistance as well. So that kind of wraps up our technical assistance piece. We also have some really exciting new initiatives that I wanted to highlight for you all. As you can see in this graphic, sort of the 2 arrows to the right here are a lot of the work that we're doing already with sort of the direct application assistance and the capacity building work that I talked about earlier. And the 3 initiatives that I'm going to talk about now are really focused on this sort of upstream capacity building piece that sort of really tries to help support the most under-resourced communities in a longer term period to really help with things like education and awareness, partnership development, skill building, some of those softer skills. So Secretary Ross already mentioned this earlier in her comments, but this is a really exciting new initiative that we've been able to support, in which CDFA has been working with UCANR to encourage the adoption of climate-smart ag practices. One thing I would just mention is that we have done sort of direct application assistance as well for now 2 rounds to support the climate-smart ag programs. And this would sort of build upon that work by supporting 10 community education specialists and really being able to support a more holistic sort of suite of needs that farmers have that's even sometimes outside of the specific funding programs. So we are also, in addition to that, continuing technical assistance as well. The next one that I'll just touch on briefly as well, in the 2018 Budget Act, we were called out to work with the Institute for Local Government on creating a program to support capacity building in communities. And so we have allocated $1 million to working on this program to support capacity building activities such as one-on-one coaching, staff training, stakeholder engagement, and climate action planning. They'll be working with 10 jurisdictions and 2 regions, and SGC has really been working with them in order to sort of support and have an advisory role in this program. The acronym for BOOST is also written up here as well. And then Louise also touched on this as well, but Senate Bill 1072 was passed in September of last year. It's a Connie Leyva bill, Senator Leyva bill. And so this program, as Louise mentioned earlier, is focusing on creating collaboratives that bring together local experts and stakeholders to really do some of this more upstream capacity building that we've been talking about, particularly for the jurisdictions that we know really need that the most to be able to have a more longer-term sustained presence in those communities. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight some key considerations that we've been thinking about as we move forward. We would really like to look into creating sort of a matching program with other agencies in order to stretch our TA dollars further. So really trying to put our heads together with other agencies and see how we can find some funds that we can leverage to ensure that we're able to support more technical assistance through this work. We're also looking to think more about having more integrated place-based technical assistance. A lot of our technical assistance that we've done so far has really been focused on specific programs, and so really trying to think about how we can actually address community needs in a more holistic way through the number of technical assistance programs that we're supporting is something that we're trying to move towards. You know, and this also gets to the point about the regional climate collaboratives and how technical assistance will really fit into that effort. Lastly, also as Louise mentioned, SB 1072 calls the Strategic Growth Council to create technical assistance guidelines. And so I think that'll really be an interesting and important opportunity for SGC to be able to pull together some information and best practices on capacity building and really be a resource for state agencies to learn more about technical assistance and also for us to be able to help coordinate and align technical assistance as it's coming online. So with that, I think I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Go ahead. Right.
Well, just a comment and then maybe a question or two. You know, I consider the development of TA programs easily the most sort of exciting aspect of state funding work over the last few years. It just seems pretty transformational. So first of all, congratulations on kind of, you know, being at the point of the spear on developing this. Mm-hmm. I also think it's great that the SGC will provide a hub for learning and coordination on TA programs. You know, the worst thing that could happen in my mind is if all of our agencies develop these TA programs separately and we're reinventing the wheel, in some cases in duplicative ways or confusing ways, and we're either overwhelming communities or creating even more confusing hoops for them to jump through. So I just think really trying to suss out to what extent there should be separate TA programs by specific program area or funding area, and to what extent they should be place-based. I just think that all really makes sense. And just speaking on behalf of the Resources Agency, you know, we're really excited about the technical assistance that we've been able to develop for our own funding programs. And you just have, you know, our full commitment to collaborate in terms of learnings and how to create cohesive, coordinated, clear programs. I guess the one program that you highlighted, or the one incident that you highlighted that stood out for me as sort of different than what I think about as traditional TA, was the funding to the Santa Clara Transportation Agency, because I think about that agency as a big, sophisticated, well-funded agency. And it seems like the TA program was really focused on bringing in some expertise to develop some curriculum for sort of, you know, youth and maybe disadvantaged youth. But to me, that seems a little different than really trying to build the capacity of under-resourced agencies to access state funds. So can you just talk a little bit about where you think that fits into the TA program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one thing that I should mention is there was a technical advisory committee that was put together really at the time of application to look at all of the different TIRCP awards and try to see where there were some real opportunities for us to focus TA on those specific applicants. I think one thing that we were really trying to focus on is there was some concern, some community concern around potential displacement through this investment. And so there was a real opportunity for us to explore some different things that we could do through technical assistance to really uplift some of the more priority populations. So it's a good point about the capacity for sure. But I think this was really a pilot trying to see how we could think about that in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to how important this development of technical assistance has been. Looking back at the beginning, the first rounds of grants and people really missing the mark because bringing this kind of integrated approach around climate to hit all these different buttons was not coming naturally, but it certainly has merit, as we can see. So I just think that this is kind of a hallmark of what can happen by putting together the Strategic Growth Council having our agencies work together, and then reaching back into our communities. If there's one thing that I think shows what a California for All is about, it's being able to award successful programs and provide the TA to make sure there are more in the pipeline and that we truly are touching every corner and every aspect of the state to truly address climate and develop climate resiliency and having many, many successful projects. I also can't say enough about our partner, to just break out in a separate one. The University of California Ag and Natural Resources houses cooperative extension, but when they came into this as our partner, they were very creative at creating a new position called community educator, which is helping a lot of young people who may have their master's, not their doctorate, but they really want to be out in the community, touching people and helping them understand the impacts of climate and what they can do to be more resilient. And so I just have to say kudos to that particular program, making $1 million go far to touch people in the community and give young people this new opportunity to be an educator at the real world level. So the TA has been tremendously successful, and I can't say enough good things about it, so I'll stop now because I can't.
Thank you. Ashley.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ina. And thanks for all of these really helpful comments. I think it's a good reminder for all of us to look within our agencies as well and figure out where the technical assistance is and bring some of that to SGC too, because you've had great models. You've done a really good job of going back out to recipients to asking how to improve the program. You've done a lot of public convenings where you've learned more about what works and what hasn't worked all over the state. So I do think if we can, all of us can look within our agencies and within our local governments and look at these other opportunities to maybe bring together, it could even be just an internal convening of where are these other technical assistance programs, what are the best practices we can bring back to our agencies as well. I think that would be really helpful just because the feedback mechanism is really baked into the SGC process, but we may not have that baked into some of the ad hoc TA type programs that we have. And then just another comment from being out in the field, I think we've seen watershed coordinators and some of the UCA and our folks and Civic Spark volunteers or colleagues all really adding so substantially at the local level. And so I just also want to echo how great the TA programs are and how important it is to create a pipeline of young people who want to work for public good and may end up moving further up the public service process. So thanks.
Any other comments from up here? That is great. Thank you, Ina. I was just going to build a little bit on what Secretary Crowfoot said and what you said and say, we talked about this last time, but clearly the work group that's going to be looking at Fresno and Tahoe as kind of potential pilots for how to think about place-based coordination across many of these agencies is a great place, again, to think about technical assistance coordination, because I really agree it's not that helpful if it's confusing and if different people are coming in or kind of parachuting in with different types of assistance and they're having community meetings. I've heard at least one instance of community meetings that happened on the same day at the same time with different agencies across town from each other. So this is the kind of thing we probably should avoid. So I think it's a great point, and it is it really does help leverage these dollars and get communities engaged. So thank you for all your work as well on this. I think we are, I did not receive any cards for general public comment, so hearing none, I think we are at the end of our meeting unless anyone has anything else they'd like to say. Staff, anything else you'd like to say? You're good? Thank you guys. You are, as always, amazingly prepared and great. And I think we all would give you an A+ from up here. So thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned.